All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ, even though many Georgia fans would like for you and each and every Tennessee fan listening to this very program make you feel as if that's not so. Make you feel bad about Tennessee rising in a lot of areas. Make you feel bad about not being at the level of Georgia in the realm of football at the moment. To make you feel bad about where you're recruiting. To make you feel bad about 5 stars walking in the building. To make you feel bad about your offensive scheme that beat Alabama. To make you feel bad about being the number 1 team in the college football playoff at one point in the 2022 calendar season. To make you feel bad about finding joy after a decade of wandering the wilderness. Thank God for Georgia fans who were there to issue that citation and to stop you in your tracks, for being happy, for enjoying a top 10 class, for enjoying things being on the up and up across the board, because it's not up and up across the board in Athens. It's only up and up for 4 months a year. And then it's back into hibernation. And they've been in hibernation for 8 months. And now they're angry. They're seeing Joe Milton as the most talented quarterback in the country from Jordan Rodgers. They're seeing folks look at Tennessee as an SEC East darkhorse, and they're upset. And I get it, but you can't bring us all down. And we won't do it on this very show. Fellow University of North Georgia alumni, Matt Green, is here. Matt, I've been sitting on this one for a week.
Wow. Coming in hot, man. I don't know what to do with all that. I don't think I was really necessarily raining on your parade or anything. I mean, you guys are pretty good at everything, and that's something. Georgia's over here trying to win national championships in multiple sports. Have you? There's multiple sports have won national championships at Georgia since the last time Tennessee won at anything. What are they? It's been like 15 years since Tennessee won a national title in anything. Like, get out of here. They're not any. They're pretty good at everything. That's all I'll give them.
Wow. I mean, if you say so, but we'll get into what all that means. But apologies for the coughing ahead of time. I'm gonna try and hit the mute button before I do. I'm just happy I was able to get through that whole intro without a cough as I work through an upper respiratory infection. So hopefully that gets out, because hosting a podcast when you have this particular illness is a little annoying, Matt Green. So appreciate you working with me on this, because it is not my favorite, and apparently you need a voice to host a podcast.
Without a doubt, not ideal situation for you. But are we just gonna jump into it? Like, what, this Georgia Tennessee thing? I know you guys got a big recruit this past week, and you should without a doubt be excited about Mike Matthews, 5-star out of Lilburn, Georgia.
Not just Lilburn, the alma mater, Parkview High School. There is a pipeline here. So I guess we can do this, and then we'll get into how many days until college football and our ACC preview as we get closer and closer to the upcoming 2023 college football season. But no, so here's the deal. Friend of the pod, Graham Coffey, and some other podcasters and Georgia fans ended up having a whole conversation that I poked my head into a little bit, and Graham's my guy, and he means well. And there is now something that I think there's a disconnect, and I'm probably going to write about this week, because I have a lot of thoughts on this particular matter. So, Tennessee brings in a 5-star wide receiver in Mike Matthews, the highest rated wide receiver Tennessee's ever brought in. He is, by all accounts, going to be just an absolute player. Like, he floats like Michael Jordan was something in the scouting reports, which is cool. Probably going to
get Michael Jordan comparisons.
Hey, the way he floats. So he's got good hang time. So shout out to Mike Matthews. But Nico Iamaleava, right? 5-star quarterback coming in last year. You get another top 10 quarterback in Jake Merklinger this cycle. Braylon Staley is in the boat, 4-star out of South Carolina receiver. And then you also have Amari Jefferson, 4-star wide receiver out of Chattanooga, who will be making a decision between technically Georgia, but Georgia's not in it, Alabama and Tennessee next week, I believe. And then you have Ryan Wingo, who will be making a decision out of Missouri, the 5-star wide receiver, at the end of December. And it looks like that one's probably down to Tennessee, Mizzou, and Texas. It seems like the big three still chasing them. So very real chance that Tennessee ends up with 3 basic 4 or 5-star receivers in this class. You bring in a big 4-star Nathan Leacock. The point being, the reason I'm mentioning all these skill position guys, and this was something that Graham was talking about on the Twitter thread that we were going back and forth on, and respectfully, because yeah, you can have respectful discourse and people can disagree respectfully on where things are going. And one of the things that I've noticed that Georgia fans are missing primarily with what Tennessee is doing. So now there is this expectation, and this kind of rubs me the wrong way, where Tennessee has put a plethora of dudes in the NFL, specifically the wide receiver position, over the last 3 years. And that is a nice thing. Georgia fans should understand. Like, it's nice to put dudes in the NFL because you can get guys like Williams Nwaneri, potentially the 5-star defensive tackle, who might end up just picking Georgia because he's just seen how many dudes have gone to the league without just coming in late in the process.
Don't try to downplay it because we're a factory of producing NFL D linemen.
No, what I'm saying is what I'm saying is that that's all it need. Sometimes because you can just say you're probably going to go to the league if you go here. Like, you're probably going to be a 1st-round pick based on this kind of track record. Like, guys have seen Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and so many dudes over the last. It's
Trayvon
a testament
Walker.
to what they have done. So what I am saying is it kind of sells itself. You're not really recruiting there. That's not really recruiting. That's not that hard. That's just you. Hey, if you've watched the draft the last couple of years,
hey, it's a loaded position group though to have to come into.
Sure, but if you're a 5-star, you think that you're gonna be able to make it work and get all of that. You shouldn't be worried about that if you're a 5-star kid coming into Georgia. That being said, look, one of the things that people are pointing out, and one of the things that they were talking about, was that Tennessee is recruiting a lot of playmaker, and they're spending a lot of their big time recruits on wide receivers when Josh Heupel schemes guys open better potentially than anybody else in the country. And it's like, do you really need to use your resources there if you're going to catch the Georges of the world? And it's like, okay, you're getting 5. Great, you got a 5-star quarterback. Can the offense be better with Nico than what we just saw this past year? Can it be better than the number 1 scoring offense? And what does that actually do to get 5-star guys in those particular areas where you're already scheming guys open and doing a lot more with less? And part of it too was like, hey, they're not winning in the trenches in terms of recruiting at the moment. Still a lot to be done. They bring in 5-star or 4-star Devin Hobbs last year. They have a lot of 4-stars in Joshua Josephs, James Pierce, Chindavian Bradley. They're in it deep with 5-star defensive tackle Camarion Franklin right now. That could end up being a Tennessee pull. There are still we still have several months here. Bring in a 4-star. You beat out Alabama for Arian Carter, who I think is going to be a stud linebacker in this group. You've recruited pretty well at the corner spot. We'll see what Kai Bates, the 4-star out of Florida, does this week. Actually, it's down to Tennessee and LSU. That'd be a humongous corner get for the Vols. But I think what's happening now, because Tennessee is ahead of schedule, and because now Georgia is seeing that, if Tennessee is the closest heir to catching us, it's like, okay, let's kind of pick at the scab of Tennessee and be like, hey, let's settle down. Here's you can't do this. Where if you're going to catch Georgia, why are you using your recruiting capital on receiver in those areas? Why aren't you? It's like they're taking the big swings. Like, Tennessee is swinging at Cam Franklin, Cam Fountain, Williams Nwaneri. Like, they are taking the big swings at those positions. They're taking big swings at 5-star offensive linemen. They're taking those big swings. They brought in a 4-star offensive guard in William Satterwhite, and they took big swings at Jaden Riddell at tight end. They've taken. It's not as
but
though...
it's not that no one thinks Tennessee is recruiting those guys, but the point is Georgia fans are not going to be truly worried about Tennessee until they start landing those guys. Like, obviously,
but it's like that's not a
try to
conversation that Tennessee fans are even saying, though. And I think that's what Georgia fans are missing. It's like Tennessee fans are just happy. Like, it's one of those, Georgia fans need to actually have a conversation with where Tennessee fans are, because Tennessee fans are just like, do you know what's awesome? kicking the shit out of the majority of the teams we play right now, because that's going to continue. Like, that is a really
to be fair, Georgia fans aren't even talking about Tennessee until they start talking about Georgia, and it's like, okay, now get back in your place now.
Tennessee fans weren't talking about it. They just saw, Georgia fans saw the 5-star receiver, and that's how this conversation saw. It's like they saw these guys now picking Tennessee, and it's like, great, like, we're not worried about Tennessee. Yeah, you can get all the 5-star receivers you want. Like, we're still going to win in the trenches, this, that, and the other. But like, Tennessee, this is what they can do right now. The biggest selling point for Heupel, it's like he can't turn away. Like, he is a QB whisperer. If you come into this scheme, you are going to put up numbers. You're going to get drafted. You're going to be like Joe Milton. If he just has an okay year, he's a second-round pick. So it's like, we also don't know. Like, Josh Heupel has never had the kind of talent. If Tennessee closes where it looks like they might close as a top 10 class again this year, and you're looking at potentially another top 10 class, then you're in the blue chip ratio. You'll be in the blue chip ratio after this year anyway. Like, then you're at a point where we've never seen Josh Heupel's offense and Josh Heupel's entire system with a bunch of dudes on both sides of the ball. And I understand when people are like, oh, you can never have an elite defense with this kind of tempo, with this kind of this, that, and the other. They beat Alabama. And this idea that like Georgia is the end all be all roadblock to Tennessee ever winning a title or ever seriously contending is not true, because there is a path where like they don't have to beat Georgia to win a title. They don't have to get through. Tennessee got through just about everyone last year. Like, you put them up against just about anyone.
But if you look at, while Alabama was their dynasty, almost every single team, it was what was like 12 or 13 straight years that won the national championship had to beat Alabama at one point, or it was Alabama. You know, I think Florida State was the only team for like a decade that either wasn't Alabama or didn't have to go through Alabama to win the national championship. And if Georgia does become that, then Tennessee obviously is going to have to go through them. But I think you're misunderstanding the argument. It's not that they should spend their recruiting capital only on the often in the trenches or whatever, and they shouldn't try to get 5-star wide receivers.
System. Yeah, that's
obviously you should get the best player you can get at every single position. Mike Matthews is a 5-star that everybody wanted, so obviously you're going to try to get him. I think the point is, Georgia's not going to be worried about Tennessee until they start landing the elite offensive linemen and defensive linemen consistently. Because, like, if you just look at what Georgia is under Kirby Smart compared to what they were under Mark Richt, like, there's this idea that they underachieved under Mark Richt, and maybe they're to a small level they did underachieve, but for the most part, Mark Richt was signing, you know, at best like the 4th or 5th ranked class in the country. There was some, but more likely it was like the 7th or 8th ranked class in the country, and that tended to be the 4th or 5th ranked class in the SEC. And then Georgia was like the 3rd or 4th best team in the SEC lots of times. It's kind of how it worked out. And you saw the skill players like the Todd Gurleys and the AJ Greens and Matthew Stafford and no Sean Marino. How do you not win a championship with these guys? It's like Georgia didn't have a first-round pick offensive lineman from, it was George Foster, I think, in 2003 until Isaiah Wynn in like 2018. Like, Mark Richt essentially didn't recruit one 5-star or one first-round pick offensive lineman the entire time he was at Georgia. And it's like, that's a red flag right there, because the game is built in the trenches. So I think that's what you look at Josh Heupel. I mean, and he would be so lucky. Let's not act like he's Mark Richt or anything. That's 15 years of consistency. I think Tennessee fans would probably take that based on where they've been the last decade plus. But I think when you look at Josh Heupel, and I know I've thrown out the Dan Mullen comparisons. It's not that it's just they shouldn't be celebrating this. They shouldn't be excited. It's just, until they start building up in the trenches, I don't think they're a realistic. And they start stacking classes on top of the other, because that's the other thing that I took exception with. I think you said Steve Wiltfong said that Tennessee's on the cusp of winning a national title. And yeah. I don't see that at all. Like, they're on the cusp of competing for national titles, I feel like. If this is on their way to doing it. Like, where are they, like 4th or 5th right now in the class rankings? Like, if they sign a top 5 class, like, that's the start of it. And then they got to stack another top 5 class on next year. And they're Tennessee. There's no reason they can't do that. I feel like the way you've talked about them at times is like they're this small market club, you know, like, well, you know, we got to temper expectations. It's like, once it gets going, the ceiling is as high as anybody. They're a reason they're a sleeping giant.
Well, hold on. I have said the ceiling is, there are certain programs that they cannot realistically catch anytime soon. And that's not, like, some of it's just geography. Like, Tennessee what I've said is that they can beat Clemson. The Tennessee being back, the biggest loser in Tennessee being back is Clemson. And you're already seeing on the recruiting trail. Like Tennessee has landed some major, like Mike Matthews is a major haymaker, because that really probably came down to Clemson and Tennessee. And you look at William Satterwhite, that came down to Clemson and Tennessee, and he ends up at Tennessee. And I think you're going to see that more and more is Tennessee and Clemson going to the wire for the same kind of kids now. And because East Tennessee is really close to Virginia, really close to North Carolina, really close to South Carolina. I mean, they're going to cross paths a lot. And I think that is a big part of Clemson maybe being in a little bit of trouble.
But if they were in the ACC, then yeah, they don't have to actually play Clemson though. So Clemson is still getting the elite talent in their conference. Tennessee might be just as good. And this 12-team playoff is really going to tell us, because me and my brother were talking about the other day, kind of comparing the Oklahoma Rose Bowl and the Ohio State Peach Bowl, kind of where Georgia's program was at that time. Like, we always thought we were like as good as Oklahoma, but we didn't actually know, because it's like, I feel like if we were in the Big 12, we could be that good, right? Like, you don't really know. This 12-team playoff, you could actually see maybe the 5th best team in the SEC is as good as the best team in the ACC some years, but that was the biggest challenge always, is like maybe you're the 3rd or 4th best team in the SEC and the 3rd or 4th best team in the country, and those more talented teams in the SEC are keeping you out historically. So that could be one thing that's going in Tennessee's favor with this new format, because it was as good as you can be in the SEC when you had Alabama and now Georgia at the top. It doesn't necessarily matter how good you are, because you have to get past one of them to even try to play Michigan or Ohio State or Clemson to see what you're made of.
Yeah, and to bring it back to the SEC recruiting, like, they're not going to recruit better than Ohio State right now. They're not going to recruit better than Alabama. They're not going to recruit better than Georgia. No one's going to recruit better than Georgia anytime soon. And then you look at Florida. The proximity of Florida, they walk into 5-star. There are more, like, geography alone will always give Florida a better advantage to landing better classes than Tennessee. Like, there is a reason that Florida, like we talk about it all the time, Florida just can't get out of their own way. But Florida is in a better spot, especially in recruiting, than Tennessee, and always will be. They should be better. But some years Tennessee should beat Florida, some years they should not. But most often I would say Florida should win those battles. And I would also say LSU, and where they are and the amount of in-state talent in the state of Louisiana, they should have better classes. It just so happens 4 of those schools are in the SEC along with Tennessee. I'm saying the ceiling, or the most realistic thing, is somewhere in Texas now, is you're going to have to be okay with the 5 to 7 range if you're a Tennessee fan when they go to 16 in the conference. And it sounds worse in theory, but it's like, that's probably the best roster in the ACC. Like, Tennessee probably has the best roster in the ACC. It has the best roster in the Big 12. But, like, it's just the SEC, and I'm saying post-Texas in the Big 12. But what I'm saying is that, like, it's just, there's only so high you can go, and you have to find your niche. And right now, Tennessee has found their niche that is scoring a lot, that is a lot of fun, that is selling out tickets, that has the fan base excited, that has this offense. They are must-see TV. Guess what? America likes watching them. The 2 biggest games, Tennessee, Georgia, and Tennessee, Alabama. Like, it's really fun watching
America's
Tennessee play.
Team. Tennessee Volunteers.
Many forget America's team. And stuff like, I don't know why this is necessary, and I want to put this quote up. And this was something that started the whole thing. Graham said, many of you, and again, love Graham, I'm not picking on Graham, many of you won't like this take, but I will start paying attention to Tennessee's recruiting when they begin landing elite front 7 and OL prospects. They're doing a great job, but Heupel's system gets most anyone open. Want to compete for titles? Beef up the lines. Someone else.
There it is.
Which, again, 2 things can be true. They can get people open, and they could also be, hey, this is our bread and butter right now. This is what's getting in guys in the league. This is what's bringing, like, if they're kind of what you were saying, if a 5-star wants to come here, we are going to bring in 5-star quarterbacks and 5-star receivers, because that is, they see this offense and they see the production. They see guys go in the NFL. Guess what? That is where guys are going to go. And then you hope that eventually turns into 5-star offensive line. Do you know what the hardest position to win? Do you know what the hardest position in this sport to recruit is? Talk to any behind-the-scenes recruiter. Guess what? There aren't many 5-star tackles. There aren't many premier guys in the trenches on both sides to bring in. It's damn hard to do this. Georgia makes it look easy. Alabama traditionally makes it look easy. There are not that many guys to go around. And if Heupel thinks that he can get around with this scheme and, hey, they coach guys up, like Darnell Wright was a 5-star coming in, guess where he got significantly better? Glenn Ellerbe. Glenn Ellerbe is not the recruiter that Jeremy Pruitt was, but guess what? He got significantly more out of Darnell Wright when he was in this system. So if he's banking on 4-stars being able to hold up and be able to do the job, and then their resources being 5-stars, the playmakers at tight end, receiver, running back, quarterback, and that being enough, and if you're weak at the offensive line and you just hope you get lucky there, or in the portal, because that's another part of it. Could they get a 4 or 5-star in the portal who wants to come in for 1 year and play in this team? That's another part of it. They are swinging hard on the defensive line to win in the trenches. And it's not like they're not going after. Devin Hobbs was Georgia wanted Devin Hobbs. Like, they are in those battles. They are trying to, we are entering year 3.
Everyone's
and people
trying.
are attacking. Well, no, people are attacking. They were number 1 in the first CFP rankings this past year. This team just barely avoided a postseason ban. They have been under a NCAA investigation for years. That's been used against them.
Where are we going here?
What I am saying is they are ahead of schedule. So Georgia fans to attack where Tennessee is, what are we worried about? This just wrapped up year 2. Were we doing this to Kirby after year 2? What were we like? This is insane to me that we're having these conversations. And then the quote, and someone posted, another podcaster posted this below it. They won't ever understand that. Also, if you run that style of offense, you'll never have a top 10 defense. It's borderline impossible. It doesn't matter who is on that side of the ball. Here's the problem. We don't know. And everyone has this final idea on what's going to happen with Tennessee and where this Heupel era is going. All we know right now is Heupel has top 10 offense after top 10 offense. He is able to score on anyone. What we don't know.
And that's my point. So if you just look at them, what Tennessee has been and what they were in 2022, like, yes, an offense can get better. They can execute a little bit better, but they scored 45 points a game. Like, how much better is the offense going to be? You watched Tennessee play last year. Did you think they need better wide receivers?
Well, this was the point I
made. They need a better quarterback. Like, that's what they were already good at, and that's what always works in their system. So the only thing they need to get better at, I mean, you looked at the Georgia game. They gave up 8 sacks in that game. Like, that's what you need to get better at as on the offensive line. And a defensive line, what were they, 50-something scoring defense in the country last year?
But they were top 30 in rush defense. Like, you couldn't run on Tennessee. That was something that they were pretty good at.
But the defense was not very good. So until they, like, the defense is better and you start stacking just consistent defensive classes, which I feel like Tennessee is recruiting better. So they're on their way to competing.
Can we let Heupel get through year 3 before we're like, what?
Hey, trust me, Kirby got no slack, so I can't cut
well, he doesn't
Heupel
deserve
any
slack. He's in the best. This is the best high school football state now in the country. Like, Georgia was always the sleeping giant. Like, he deserves credit for tapping in, but like, it's different. Georgia should be recruiting better and should be better than Tennessee. It's a better situation.
I'm just saying he was unfairly judged after like year 3 or 4. But Heupel is definitely moving in the right direction. But just to say just the blanket statement on the cusp of winning a national title, I just don't think they're quite there yet. Because I feel like this
can
offense.
Georgia fans leave us alone? Can they let us have joy? Like, if your response is like, I'll worry about Tennessee when they get a 5-star offensive lineman, can we? And then this idea that this offense can't win a title. What? We don't know that. Nebraska won multiple titles running the option. Like, we have no idea what can win titles anymore. Like, the idea
they also had some elite defensive players.
But what I am saying is, like, can the games just happen? Can we just see on the field? Can I see what Nico looks like? Can I see what 5-star receivers and a 5-star quarterback in Josh Heupel's system looks like? Can I see that? Do we have to make these decisions? Like, just talking down to what Tennessee's ceiling is at this point, based on what we've seen to this point, which is only positives here. Can we just see the games? Can we just take some time? But the biggest thing about this is we're excited because guess what's back? Tennessee and Georgia beef. And we have not had this in a long time, where now it's going to be the defense. And I'm already seeing it play out where the offensive, Georgia fans are going to roll their eyes at Tennessee's offense year over year. Where they're like, yeah, you can drop 60 on South Carolina and Kentucky again. Bring it up. Like, that's a cute offense that you win 10 games with.
They didn't drop 60 on South Carolina last year.
I mean, the last time they were in Knoxville. I'm just going to go ahead and tell you this year, what Tennessee is going to do to South Carolina at home early in the year is going to be it's just going to be illegal.
I think I cut off your point. But Georgia fans will be right to feel that way. Like, yeah, you guys dropping 60 on Missouri, like that's cool. If you're scoring less than 20 against Georgia, you're not going to beat them. So
which is fair, but we also don't know because guess what? Alabama was an extremely talented team last year. They lost 2 games.
Bama was flawed last year, though.
But the defense wasn't. The defense was still a top 10 defense. They had talent
I don't think they were top 10, maybe top 20, though. I mean, LSU beat Alabama. Like, LSU was
a top 10 team.
I don't think so.
Tennessee,
I think they were like 15th or 16th. LSU. That's what I'm saying. So, like, I feel like Tennessee fans feel like we beat Alabama, we got to the mountaintop, and
no, it's awesome. It's nice.
From 2010 to 2020, like that was the mountaintop.
Georgia's just the biggest. Like, no Tennessee fan has ever once said that we're close to Georgia. That's the other part of it. It's like everyone knows. Everyone knows.
No, that's definitely. I'm on Twitter. I see these crazy Tennessee fans.
I picked Georgia to beat Tennessee on this podcast. You were here.
No, I'm not saying you're not logical, but there's plenty of Tennessee fans that think they're gonna destroy Georgia next year. Like they're definitely they're not
destroying Georgia. But do I think it could be close in the fourth quarter? Kind of like Tennessee,
in Knoxville, you gotta like your chances as good of it. I'm not poo-pooing it as hard as Graham Coffee is, but I share the sentiment of Graham Coffee, but like you said, like taking it to Twitter unprovoked after a big time 5-star commit.
That's what I'm saying.
Feels like hater stuff for sure. But I feel
are back-to-back champions. Why are you hating on Tennessee just getting any kind of? You know what's nice? Let us live. Let us have 5-star receivers and 5-star quarterbacks and just enjoy our lives.
I will not, like, when I see a Tennessee fan, talking too much, I can't bite my tongue and I got to jump in there. But no, I'm never starting any sort of conversation about Tennessee. Like, I'm not thinking about Tennessee until they start talking. I gotta set them straight.
I mean, let's just see what happens game 3 with Heupel, Kirby. Let's just see. I don't know
for sure. And in Joe Milton, without a doubt, it's gonna be interesting. I feel like you weren't even sold on Joe Milton. Now we got Jordan Rodgers hyping up Joe Milton. I'm
absolutely still not sold on Joe Milton.
Yeah, so it should be interesting.
Yeah, not in the least bit. Well, there you go, folks. Tennessee, Georgia, it's back.
Yes, sir.
Which is fun. Matt Green, how many days are we away from the return of college football?
We are 38 days away from college football season. And for number 38, we got what were the two best quarterbacks in the ACC last year, and most likely the best quarterback in the ACC this year. Drake May and your boy Sam Hartman both threw 38 touchdowns a year ago. And we're obviously going to get into our ACC preview later. But also the best 38 of all time, I'm going Roy Williams, Oklahoma. What do you think?
Oh, you're not going with your own team. Best.
I can give you the best Georgia 38 of all time. Also, George Rogers, South Carolina. I got to hype up. Gwinnett County native, Heisman Trophy winner.
Where did he play?
He was from Duluth.
Oh. Huh. Not a lot.
Yeah,
of
apparently
Duluth
he takes his
Wildcats.
Heisman everywhere. Like his Heisman is like always in the car. And like anytime anyone recognizes him, he's got like the Heisman. He's like, hey, you want a picture of the Heisman? He's like always got it. So shout out to George Rogers.
Interesting. I could not tell you 138. I'm off top. I'm like thinking like who is there are a lot of 38s.
They're not a lot of 38s. I'll give him his props, but I mean Herschel 1980 obviously should have won the Heisman, but they weren't giving it to freshmen back then. But that's not important right now.
Did he wear 38 as a freshman?
No, I'm talking about Herschel. I'm saying no. 1980, George Rogers won the Heisman ahead of Herschel.
Oh, gotcha.
And obviously Herschel was like great, and George won the national
Tim
championship.
Worley
and everything.
wore 38.
Tim Worley, okay. A little throwback Georgia running back. Also, best 38 of my era, Marcus Howard for sure. The Predator, as a lot of Georgia fans like to call him, because he had the dreads and everything. But yeah, on that 2007 Georgia team, he was that kind of undersized pass rusher. He destroyed Colt Brennan, had like 4 sacks, I think, in that beatdown of Hawaii. That iconic play where he just absolutely destroyed him and like recovered it in the end zone. But yeah, Marcus
Georgia
Howard.
fans imagine Tennessee versus Georgia is going to be year over year.
I mean, Eric Stokes put like a similar hit on whoever that quarterback was in 2019. Then Georgia and Tay Crowder returned it like 60 yards for a touchdown. So that was a similar hit that Colt Brennan took.
Yeah, that was Jarrett Garantano, I think.
No, it was a backup.
Oh,
I want to say like Maurer or Maurer.
Oh, it was Brian Maurer.
I think that's who it was.
That man was reckless. He's one of the most reckless quarterbacks I've ever seen play football.
Yeah, I don't think he got many starts or many reps
he
for
just
Tennessee.
Looked for contact. That guy just did not care. That man was he was a wild card. He was a wild card for sure. Brian Maurer. That is not a name I've thought about in a long time.
Who's the best Tennessee 38? You got one?
Solon Page, the third from this past group. That's the first one that came to mind.
What number was Peerless Price? He was like a weird 37. Okay. Mm-hmm.
We'll just do that. That's close enough.
There you go. If you're listening to this on Thursday, we're 37 days away. Peerless Price.
We're really close, man. We're in the 30s now.
Yeah, for sure. Next episode's gonna be in August, man.
That's insane. This July is especially flown by. Has especially flown by. Matt Green, ACC preview. As we move along here in our preview series, next week we'll do the Pac-12, and then the big dogs with the Big Ten and the SEC. I think we'll conclude with the SEC, just with how this podcast works and where our allegiances lie. I think that's fair. To start the ACC, though, kind of a similar question to what we did with the Big 12 in Texas. And I've been thinking about this because I'm going to pick Clemson to win the ACC this year. And I think they're a very good sleeper dark horse to make the college football playoff. Is there a team on Clemson's tier this year? Like, just when you think about it, like a lot of Florida State hype, a lot of top-heavy guys, top 5 picks in the draft, and Jared Verse, Jordan Travis is back, Benson's back, a lot of talent in this Seminole team. But do you think Clemson is still on their own tier in this conference this year?
It kind of feels that way. I feel like their ceiling is definitely higher than anyone else's, but it feels like it's not a guarantee that they're necessarily going to be on. It feels like if North Carolina or Florida State is on their level, it's because Clemson isn't as good as we thought, not because those teams are just that much better. I guess Florida State's the only one that I would say there's a chance that they're so good that they're on Clemson's level. But part of me feels like the Florida State hype. Yeah, we'll get into our team by team predictions, but I don't know. I'm hesitant to put them on Clemson's level.
It's also funny when you go through Clemson's roster. They're just Zapo really. There's just no transfers. Like, it's just everywhere else. You're just like looking at who's new, who's not. You don't have to do that with Clemson. Clemson, it's exactly who you think it is going to be on Clemson year in, year out. It's a system. They stick to it. But, yeah, that's I'm very curious to see what the polling and what people end up thinking when it comes to the different tiers and if they see Clemson being in their own tier. Because I tend to agree with you. I think they have the highest ceiling. I think it's still a little too soon for me for Florida State. We'll get into those over-unders and what they potentially mean, but I think Clemson has a very, very strong chance of being an 11-1, 12-0 regular season team and being a college football playoff team. I think it's fair for Clemson fans to expect, especially with Garrett Riley coming in leading this offense and what I think will be one of the best defenses in college football. Once again, best linebacker in the country. I don't think there's a lot of excuses to be had for Clemson to not make it back to the college football playoff this year. I think that's a big L if they do not. The biggest unknown, though, to you, Matt Green, in this conference, when you're doing your preview and your homework here, who do you still just feel like is the biggest unknown to you that you have no grasp on?
To me, it's got to be Miami, just because we've seen Tyler Van Dyke be a really good player, and we've seen him be really bad. And we got to figure out who's the real Tyler Van Dyke. And Cristobal, as I feel like I got an underachieving vibe at Oregon. It felt like Oregon could have been a little bit better than than they were in Cristobal's tenure, but they were really good. Like, they were consistently one of the best teams in the Pac-12. So, I haven't given up that Cristobal can take Miami there, but in terms of like what they gave us week in and week out last year, just like this team, you have absolutely no idea what to expect. So they're the one team that I feel like has that like winning the conference potential and like missing a bowl game potential.
I think that's right because I think, as I muted myself from coughing for a second there and forgot to unmute, I think that's right with Miami because Miami, like 7.5 in that over under tells me that Vegas is like, yeah, you have 10.5 talent, but they just have no idea what to do with you. Like, you could go 6-6 and it wouldn't surprise us. They could also go 11-1 and win the ACC and it wouldn't surprise us. Both new coordinators on both sides of the ball. That's highly volatile. Tyler Van Dyke has just had a really insane career at Miami to this point. Who knows how that goes this year? I think that's the right pick. I'm okay with Miami being the most unknown because I think they're just the most volatile of anyone in the conference. Best odds to hit their win-loss over under for you, Matt Green.
The best odds, I look at it. Louisville is a tempting one because everyone's talks about their schedule. I think North Carolina though at 8.5. I feel like this team feels like at least a 9-win team. Like, you got the best quarterback in college football. Like, if you're not going to compete for the conference title this year, like, when are you ever going to compete for it? I just think Drake May is that good. That this team should expect to make the ACC championship, like realistically be a contender to win the ACC championship. So I'm gonna go North Carolina. I think 9-3 is their floor.
Interesting.
That's not true. 9-3 is about their floor, but I feel like they're gonna be good this year.
I think Boston College in the under is probably my biggest lock. Boston College is awful. Like, they're trending awful. They're recruiting awful. Their offense is putrid. Phil Dracovic is long gone. This offense is going to be terrible. And 5.5, I'm like, that is very, very generous to what I think about this Boston College program at the moment. I mean, I think them losing one of Holy Cross, Northern Illinois to start the year is in play. Going to Army in the middle of October scares me if I'm a Eagle fan, if I'm a BC diehard. That just has all the makings of a loss to me. I'm completely out. I think you can make the case that outside of Virginia, I think they're the two worst programs right now in the ACC. They're a sneaky dumpster fire.
Yeah, I saw some Matt Ryan Virginia Tech versus Virginia Tech clips earlier today. I think on Instagram, and I was like, I don't even like. It's hard to remember Boston College being like competitive in college football.
This is a new one I wanted to ask you, and it's like, because I'm a big NBA basketball guy too, Matt Green, and League Pass team to watch. Like, I'm obviously a League Pass guy, being able to watch different teams around the league during the year. My question to you, and we'll do this for each conference team, who do you think will be the League Pass, like Matt Green's watching, he has to tune in, he has to flip over because they're on, and he just feels like their games are going to be the most fun, guaranteed, of anyone else in the conference this year? Who do you think that is?
Well, I promise this isn't a Chapel Hill podcast here, but it's definitely the Tar Heels. Like, North Carolina, every single game they played, like the first half of the season last year, was just wild. And Drake May, I feel like I said, he's the best quarterback in college football, in my opinion. Like, Caleb Williams is obviously great too, but Drake May is just a baller. So just to see his games, that's like, I depending on what the slate is, you get some of those boring noon games sometimes. Like, if I get a bad North Carolina game, I might take that over Missouri Vanderbilt or something.
North Carolina is definitely the pick because North Carolina, the Cardiac Kids, this schedule, Matt Green, is just made up for a league pass diehard. Like, if you're not watching North Carolina, I'm not saying you have to watch intently. That they're going to be at the Dukes Mayo Classic is going to be where game day is in week 1 in Charlotte, which is basically, I guess, a home game for them. You know South Carolina, North Carolina is going to be dumb as hell. Like, you know that game is going to be stupid, sloppy, back and forth.
I'd say that's a neutral site, though, in terms of, like, I bet the crowd's 50-50.
Okay, maybe it will be. I don't know. Either way, it's going to be sloppy. Then you get App State the week after. We know you talked about what happened last year. That's going to be sloppy. Minnesota, who's good.
I feel like sloppy, I imagine like a 12-9. I feel like that's going to be like sloppy. A 55-52. Yeah.
They're a high scoring slot because Gene Chizik is still calling that defense, Matt Green. There's not a lot of 12-15 games on the horizon for North Carolina. No, I don't see that being the case. No, you look at it, Minnesota at Pitt. Pitt always takes you into the gutter with them. Like, I think it's going to be a wild, bonkers year. And I think the last 3 games in their calendar is just going to be the worst case scenario for them. Duke, which is suddenly, we'll talk about them, a really interesting team. At Clemson, at NC State. Whoa, that's rough. That is a rough way to end your year. So, yeah, North Carolina being a league pass darling for the ACC and just someone you just tune in. Like, if there was a red zone channel for college football, North Carolina, I think, in the ACC would be the one that you're like.
Why is there not a red zone channel for college football? I think is the better question.
Because that poor guy, can you imagine keeping
12 straight hours of commercial-free football? It doesn't have to be him. It could be one of us.
Yeah, that's fair. Matt Green, of anyone in this conference, who do you think is the most likely to get fired this year?
Ooh, most likely to get fired. I feel like I wasn't able to come up with a great candidate to get fired this year. Am I missing somebody?
I think Jeff Hapley's on the table at BC, depending on how bad it gets. I think Dino Babers is on the hot seat at Syracuse. I think.
Yeah, Dino Babers. That's probably a good call.
Like, he's been good. Like, last year's team was really good. They had Clemson on the ropes in Death Valley. Like, he had that thing humming. Garrett Trader is back. You promoted from within with their QB coach running the same kind of scheme that had a lot of success with Brandon Armstrong and company. Robert and who is, I believe, now the OC at NC State, but is it Tim Beck? I'm trying to think who is the current offensive coordinator who got promoted, but he was the QB coach and running the same scheme that Garrett Trader played really well in. So we'll see what that looks like, but I think those two are probably in play. And then that's probably it, I would say, but it is a pretty stable conference at the moment, but I would not be surprised if there's some hot seat talk with BC and Syracuse, depending on how their respective seasons go, Matt Green. So speaking of BC, let's do our actual over-under thoughts for each team in the conference. Boston College, 5.5, Matt Green. Does that feel right? And what is do you think they go over? And what does the number sound like to you?
So they're coming off 3-9 a year ago. Jeff Hafley is yet to take them bowling in his 3 years. And like you said, Phil Jerkovich is gone. Zay Flowers is gone. It's hard to get excited about much for BC. I think I'm going to get with same as you on this one. I'm going to go under on BC under the 5.5.
Yeah, I mean, it's just not going the right way at all, and I was pretty excited. I mean, he was DC at Boston at Ohio State.
I was digging him. I was digging him after that little shit talking he got in with Eli Drinkowitz. Like after they ended up beating Missouri. Like, but that's pretty much the highlight is beating Missouri.
That's true. And apologies, I just don't think 122nd in scoring in the country. They were right there with Iowa, and they're kind of like Iowa, just a bad version of it under Hafley. So, I don't know. I'm out on BC as well. Next up, Matt Green, Clemson, 10.5. What do you think?
So Clemson, you look at their schedule, and it's not a gauntlet, really. I mean, obviously have South Carolina out of conference, but other than that, like this team should cruise to 3-0. Like I do like Duke. Duke's not just a pushover in week 1, but this team should start 3-0 before, and I think everyone's just waiting for that showdown with Florida State pretty much in week 4. But it feels like that's their whole schedule. Obviously, they do have Notre Dame. They got North Carolina. It's like it's as tough as Clemson's schedule I think does get. I think in recent years, this is probably one of the more challenging schedules they've had. I feel like it just all comes down to Cade Klubnik. I feel like I trust that Clemson is going to be good enough in all the other spots versus everybody they play. But it comes down to like which Cade Klubnik are we getting? Are we getting the ACC championship one? Are we getting the one that lost to Tennessee? Like what lost to South Carolina? Like, you know, we really need to see that. So I'm tempted to go under because I feel like they're 10-2 feels like a realistic possibility, but give me the over. Give me Clemson going 11-1 this year. Because outside of Florida State, I don't, and I think they could beat Florida State. That's obviously at Clemson. So it's hard to see more if they can get past Florida State. It's hard to see more than one loss on the schedule.
Yeah, I think 11-1 feels right, but I also don't think Florida State's the one. I would almost book them beating Florida State. Like I would be surprised if they lose at home. And if you go back through, I mean, Clemson just doesn't lose at home. Like it just doesn't happen. That's just not something that really happens at Clemson. So I look at those and I'm like, I'm just gonna go ahead and cancel those out. At Duke to open the year, I think will be very interesting because I think Duke's gonna be really solid. Mike Elko's got a good defense, and we'll see what that looks like. For Clemson, I think they'll get by, but I think that'll be closer than a lot of people think, and that will be like, oh, what's going on? Why is it 17-10 Clemson going into the 4th against Duke? But I think Duke's pretty solid. And then you look at this stretch is where I think that they drop one, and that is at Miami, at NC State, Notre Dame, and home. I don't know who it is of that 3, but that is a pretty interesting stretch where they're going to get tested. And you look at it, there's a path where all 3 of those teams are top 25 teams this year. And hey, that could be pretty spicy for them. I'm not worried about them losing back-to-back years in South Carolina. I would probably take them there. Garrett Riley's going to have this offense humming. Will Shipley will be good. And Cade Klubnik, I think, will have a good year 2 here. But yeah, no, give me Clemson 11-1. But I do think the loss is not to Florida State or South Carolina. I think it's to one of those 3 in that stretch.
See, and obviously you're the number 1 South Carolina hater, so you're not gonna give the Gamecocks anything. But that is in Columbia. But I think the 3 best teams on their schedule are Florida State, Notre Dame, and North Carolina, and all 3 of those are at home. So yeah, I think they're good to get those 11 wins.
All right, Duke, Matt Green, 6.5. What does this feel like to you?
Well, I saw the number and I was like, this is an easy over. I like the Blue Devils. 9-4 a year ago. Like this team was Riley Leonard was really good at last year, and I feel like they seem very solid. So I feel like I like the idea of Duke just kind of being a better team in 2023. But I look at this schedule, and this schedule is not doing them any favors at all. Like week 1, just to have Clemson, you do get Clemson at home, but I mean that's not a great start, especially when we're going to get into like Louisville and some of these other teams on their schedule. Like some teams did get fortune when it comes to who they got in conference with the division play gone now in 2023. But obviously they get Clemson, they get Notre Dame, they're at Florida State, at Louisville, at North Carolina, get Pitt and NC State both at home. Like I feel like Duke is playing the majority of the good teams in the ACC. So I felt like just seeing the number on the surface, 6.5, it felt easy until I actually dug into the schedule. And it's going to be tough for them to get to 7 wins with this schedule, but I do like what Mike Elko's building there. So give me the over just barely for the Duke Blue Devils.
Is it the best job that anyone's done at a new spot? Like it's really a bad job. Like Duke was in really bad shape. Right, Leonard looks like a dude and they're just like assume that they're going to be bowling every year under Mike Elko. Like he's just revamped that program and it's just turned it into strong defense first, competent, and just a team that no one really wants to play. They're going to be kind of a pain in the ass. Like Mike Elko, sneaky.
Yeah, it kind of reminds you of Mark Stoops in Kentucky.
Yeah. That's a good call. I mean, that's great if you're Duke football. That's a great thing to build.
Basketball blue bloods, and then it can get into a little pissing contest with John Shire in a couple years.
I don't think John Shire has that kind of personality, but I guess you never know. Coach K, I feel like maybe. FSU 9.5. I think this might be the toughest one on the list here, Matt Green. 9.5 for Florida State. Wait,
did you go over on Duke?
Over on Duke, yes.
Okay. Florida State 9.5.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going first? You want me to go?
You can go.
I would say this is kind of similar to how I felt with the Duke one, like 9.5. I feel like Florida State feels like a 10-2 team, but you look at their schedule and with LSU just week one right out of the gate, like that's a college football playoff contender week one, and another college football playoff contender week 4. Like this team could be a legit top 10 team and start the season 2-2. So I'm still hesitant to know like how legit was that 6 straight wins to end the season last year. You know, there wasn't many great teams. I like Jordan Travis, but I like Jordan Travis. I don't love Jordan Travis. The Heisman hype he's getting, I feel like we're getting, it's this brand thing, right? I feel like Florida State just falls in this brand bias that like, as soon as we get a hint that this team is good again, like everyone's all in. They don't hesitate. Like Clemson, it took people like 5 years to convince everyone that they were actually legit. You know, it's like, no, I'm telling you guys, we're like actually a championship level team now. It's like, okay, Clemsoning. You just keep going on and Clemsoning. It's like Miami wins like this, they go 6-0 and it's the U is back, you know? So I think Florida State is one of those. I feel like we're desperate for them to be back. So we just want to believe that they're back. But I feel like after starting 2-2, I think it's gonna be tough to win. What is that? 8 straight, similar to what 2011 Mark Richt. I think they started 0-2, and then Georgia won 10 straight against lesser competition. I think Florida State. It's not a gauntlet after that Clemson in week 4, but I just don't know that they're even the team that we can just know what to expect week in and week out. You just saw some of the inconsistencies last year. They should be improved, but it feels like a 9-3 team to me. So, yeah, give me the under on Florida State.
I didn't think we would agree here, but we actually agree, Matt Green. They're top 20 in offense and defense last year. They're going to be both. I think they're going to be a team that the record doesn't match how good they are. I think they're going to be a top 10 team, but I think their record ends up being 9-3. And I don't think LSU loses to this team back-to-back years. I don't like them at Clemson at all. I think that's a loss. And like you said, 2-2 is going to be really hard to overcome and find their way back into the college football playoff at that point. And then you just have to run the gauntlet. And I don't see them also getting through at Pitt and at Florida to close. I think you drop one more of those two down the stretch.
Yeah, that's a win. Everyone I feel like is just counting with Florida State being trendy. Like at Florida, like that is far from a gimme. Like I'm not like super high on Florida this year by any means, but I would be careful in counting that as a W. And something about Jordan Travis's style, like can this guy hold up for a whole year? Like he's got a reckless style. I don't want to wish injuries on anybody. But, that's super important. I think Florida State fans, if anybody know, quarterback getting injured basically derailed the entire program for about 5 years. So let's hope Jordan Travis can stay healthy. But he plays a little reckless.
Yeah.
And he's not a big guy.
But he's also, 36 points a game last year. They were great. But in wins, they averaged 40. In losses, 22. There's a split there. And they had a really big November averaging 44 a game. But in October, 26. So it was just kind of up and down. First, the Power 5, they only averaged 33, non-Power 5, 49. So you just had to parse through a little bit more. And I think they're just going to be they're going to be in those close games, and there are going to be some coin flip games that they need to win. And that's LSU, that's Florida, that's Pitt. Like, you're going to have to win more of those than you lose if you want to make it in the college football playoff. So I think with folks who really want to throw them in the college football playoff this year, I just think it's a year or two too soon with the Noles. They're on the right path. They're well coached, good program. I just think this is a 9-3 type situation for Florida State. And I think, unfortunately, it's going to be a letdown for a lot of folks, which is not their fault because they're just playing the games that they can. Georgia Tech, Matt Green, 4.5. What does it feel like to you?
Last thing I'll say about Florida State is the portal. It's like, I feel like the portal is just not, it's just so an unknown. And it's like, if you feel like you're getting a lot of contributors out of the portal, it's like you just don't know that all of those guys are going to be good for you. So I just think it's such a, that's another risky thing. It's like a high risk, high reward type of thing.
Yeah.
But going to Georgia Tech, they finished 5-7 last season, and a big part of that was because Brent Key took over, and they went 4-4 under Brent Key. This year, 4.5 is their over under, and it's tough when you look at the schedule. Obviously, they have to play Georgia at a conference. It's basically an automatic loss. Also have to go at Ole Miss this year. But they have to play Clemson. You know, they have to play a lot of teams that could potentially be in the college football playoff. I feel like because of Brent Key, I feel like I'm a believer that they can get over that 4.5 though. Like they don't even necessarily have to go bowling, but I am going to go over. I'm going to say, I see South Carolina State, Bowling Green, like they can get wins right there. Then they just need 3 wins in the conference. They got Syracuse, they got Virginia, Boston College on the schedule. Like, I don't know. I think they can eke out 5 wins.
I think so too, and I think they're moving in the right direction here.
Agreeing on all of these.
I think Georgia Tech is moving in the right direction. I like the Buster Faulkner OC hire a lot. I think Zach Pyron's going to be good. I'd like 3 new transfers at wide receiver, some Texas A&M talent coming in there. Our offensive line's really good. That's another part of it. Is Georgia Tech has a pretty good offensive line, and Brent Key, obviously an offensive line guy. I just look at this group and this schedule, and I think it's pretty manageable. I mean, at Ole Miss will be really interesting. Louisville to open. Hey, that's kind of coin flip. We don't know what they're going to look like.
Will at Ole Miss be interesting, or will Ole Miss just name their score, basically?
I don't think so. I think it will be closer than you think. I think Georgia Tech Ole Miss will not be this Ole Miss curb stomp.
That one got ugly last year.
I just don't think it will go that way this year. Maybe I'm wrong. But then you get Syracuse at home. At Virginia is not scary. North Carolina feels like Georgia Tech. North Carolina is always weird. You get Boston College at home. That feels like a win. Bowling Green, South Carolina State. I think they walk into 5-7, and then they're right there on the bowl precipice come the end of the year against Georgia. But if they need to beat Georgia, kind of like Vanderbilt a year ago needed to beat Tennessee to make a bowl game, they're in trouble. But they're moving in the right direction. I think Georgia Tech has some interesting things cooking. Top 25 class, I think, right now for 2024. The class ended today. So Brent Key, shout out to him. Also very likable, Brent Key. I like his quotes today from ACC Media Day. Louisville, 8.5. We might disagree here, Matt Green. Where are you at with Louisville?
So I think everyone's been talking about Louisville's schedule this offseason because they don't play Clemson and they don't play Florida State. But I'm going to blow your mind with this stat right here. They play 5 games away from home this year. 4 of those games are in NFL stadiums. How about that? They're going to play Georgia Tech and Mercedes-Benz. They're going to play Indiana in Lucas Oil Stadium. Then they're going to play Pitt, who plays in a NFL stadium, and they're going to play Miami, who plays in an NFL stadium. So that was just a crazy stat to me, so I had to throw that out there. But I look at Louisville, 8.5. If that feels too bold for me, it's not like their schedule is a gauntlet or anything. Like, like we just said, Georgia Tech to open it up, like Indiana, like they might be one of the worst teams in the Big Ten this year. They might be the worst team in the Big Ten this year. But at NC State, they do play at Pitt, Notre Dame. Like, they did get the Notre Dame rotation, so that's not easy. We also just talked about Duke, Miami, don't know what to expect, and closing with Kentucky. Like, it's hard for me to see. Like, I think they're a team that goes bowling, but 8.5 for them to have to be a 9-win team. Like, I can't do that. I got to go under on Louisville.
We're gonna agree again. I thought you were gonna go over on Louisville. This is an 8-4 schedule right here, and Jack Plummer might be the quarterback this whole year. Jack Plummer's not a good quarterback. I don't care how great of a quarterback whisperer Jeff Brom is. That's not where you want to be year one. Malik Cunningham is the quarterback. I'm going over this year for year one for Jeff Brom. It's Jack Plummer's show, and I don't see that right out of the gate here. 8-5 feels right. I think there's a lot of winnable games, but then you look at NC State, Notre Dame, at Pitt. That's brutal. That's a brutal 3-game stretch for Louisville. Duke at home is not going to be a cakewalk, and then at Miami and Kentucky to close. I don't think they get over those two unscathed either. So this just reeks to me of 8-4, probably a top 25 offense, top 20, a lot of fun, but I don't think they're a 9-10 win team in year one for Jeff Brom. So nailed the under there.
Man, we got to disagree at some point.
Miami, maybe this is it. Have we disagreed yet or no?
No, none of these.
Miami, 7.5.
So I look at Miami, and I was obviously just talking about Miami being like the most volatile team in the ACC. I think they do get A&M at home this year, and that's what you call a sloppy game a year ago. Like that, no one wanted to win that game. But I feel like A&M's going to be improved, so I think that's going to be a tough one for Miami. It's a weird schedule, though. So, like, you got just all these cupcakes at the start of the season other than Texas A&M, and then you got your bye week early on, and then you got 8 straight games. So it's not like an ideal time to have your bye week after your cupcake game. So that's kind of a weird schedule for Miami. I think that type of thing I feel like will catch up to them. But yeah, going at North Carolina, at NC State, at Florida State, you got Clemson mixed in there. Like it's not a gauntlet of a schedule, but you do play Florida State and Clemson, who I think most people think are the class of the ACC. I think they're going to be better than they were a year ago, but this feels like it could be a 7-5 team. Like maybe 8-4. I do like the 7.5 number, but give me under. I'll go 7 wins for Miami this year. Here's
where we disagree. This schedule is really nice for them. And the talent, I'm just going to bet on Mario Cristobal figuring it out. The new coordinators, they bring in kind of a Houston disciple here. I think the offense is going to be a lot better. They were like in the 90s last year in scoring offense, which was just atrocious. I think the offense takes a big step forward. There's talent on both sides of the ball. I look at this group and I look at the schedule. I think the A&M game is going to be huge, dictating where this season's going to go for them. But I think there is a good path to them winning that game. It's good to get them at home this go around. Look, losing to Middle Tennessee State at home the way they did was embarrassing, but like toss it. You go back through the schedule. You might be looking at Clemson on October 21st and both schools are undefeated. Like that's very much in play by that point in the year. And that's a college game day potential type game. And then you look at it, you're like at Florida State will obviously be tough, but at Boston College to end, like at this schedule, like there's really no excuses for Mario Cristobal not to have a big year 2 jump. What do we talk about in this podcast a lot? Year 2 jumps for these coaches. I think this is the kind of schedule you want if you're Mario Cristobal. This looks to me like a 9-3, 10-2 schedule. And if they don't get there, I'm having my doubts about where things are headed for the Cristobal era in Miami. So give me the over for the Canes.
I do love a good year 2 coach. But I mean, this team lost to Middle Tennessee State last year. Heaven forbid you lose to Miami of Ohio. You're not ready to be the other Miami. Like you're not ready for those memes. They need to win that one week 1.
Matt Green, next up, North Carolina, 8.5. Do we disagree again here?
Let's see. So North Carolina, they do avoid Florida State this year. They have Clemson on the road. I think that's the first thing I kind of look at when I'm looking at these teams' schedule. I think they're the better team than South Carolina personally, and more importantly, I think they're the better team week 1. Like I think South Carolina, I'd be surprised if South Carolina like knows what they are in week 1. They lost a lot of key guys to the portal. I'm skeptical of South Carolina early on, but so they need to win South Carolina first and foremost. I think that's kind of like you just said with Miami and Texas A&M. Like that's going to kind of decide where their season goes. But we are obviously talking about North Carolina earlier. Like they don't really have many cupcakes out of conference. Like with App State, Minnesota. Like it's going to be an interesting season. But I look at them and I feel like this team can go 9-3, maybe even 10-2, if Drake May can put the team on his back. So give me the Tar Heels to go over.
I don't like the Chip Lindsey transition. Like Drake May makes it all very complicated because, I mean, he's going to be one of the 2 best quarterbacks in the country this year, with him and Caleb Williams. Phil Longo was really good. He was top 20 offense after top 20 offense after top 20 offense, and now he moves on to Wisconsin. Chip Lindsey, very different scheme, but they did say that it was more of like kind of like that Bobo Monken thing where it's like, yeah, we have called very different offenses in the past, but it's the Georgia offense. I wonder if North Carolina has the North Carolina offense installed where it's just not going to change all that much, even if we've seen very different stuff from these 2 coordinators. But it's enough where I'm like, I think that's a little concerning. I think there is some concern there for North Carolina. And the volatility with them, they got very lucky in some big games last year. And this defense is going to be awful. Again, like I just don't see a path where they're not. And you look at it, Minnesota at home, at Pitt. I mean, South Carolina, I don't think they win the South Carolina game. This feels like a 7-5, like just kind of really bad year for North Carolina. I think they take a step back. I don't buy that they're able to stumble into 9-10 wins again. I think if I'm going to pick Miami to rise, Florida State to be good, Clemson to be good, I have to have someone fall down a little bit. And I think North Carolina is the one that ends up falling. Don't trust them. The defense stinks. And I think you got worse in offensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, if the defense isn't improved, you just never really know what the floor truly can be. I think the other thing, and like I was talking about Jordan Travis, like Drake May led this team in rushing a year ago, almost 700 yards. Like he's a dynamic dual threat, but they do not need this guy to be carrying the load on the ground. Like that's not going to be a winning formula for them in 2023.
Absolutely. Matt Green, North Carolina State, 7.5, kind of low after what we've seen from Dave Doran's bunch over the last couple of years. New offensive scheme. Beck gets the head coaching job at Coastal Carolina, so different scheme with Robert Anai moving over from Syracuse here. Brennan Armstrong, it looks like, might be the quarterback starting day 1 here at NC State. What do you think about the Wolfpack and where they're going to be this year?
Yeah, they're another one of those teams. Like they're kind of tough for me to read. Other than like you said, they feel just so consistent. Like their floor is basically 7 wins over the last like decade under Dave Doran. So this, like not having Devin Leary, like I don't know exactly what you're getting out of the quarterback position this year. Like so that's one concern, but I don't know. I feel like 7-5 feels like the ceilings or the floor. So when you have 7.5, like I feel like it's possible. Like I don't know. What are you saying about North Carolina State?
This schedule, I think, is like there's 2 ways of looking at this. If you're a college football sicko, you look at the schedule and you're like, oh, this isn't really great because outside of VMI, you don't really get a break here. Like there's not really, you don't have the gauntlet, you don't have the big swingers, like the big out of conference stuff, but you have enough here where you're like, this just sucks for NC State. At UConn went bowling last year. I'm not saying they're going to lose to UConn.
Is that difficult?
Yes. I think that's going to be a game. UConn is going to be better again this year. I think UConn's they're on the up and up. They might be Big 12 bound by the time this podcast is up. I am saying that game is going to be close at UConn. Then you follow up Notre Dame at home. You're losing that game. Like that's not great. So you get those 2 back-to-back. Great. You get some time off against VMI. Then you play at Virginia on a Friday. That's gonna be. I mean, you know about those
Weekday
Friday
road
night
game.
spookies. Like you know about that one. Louisville the following Friday. So you have back-to-back Friday nights. That's weird. Don't see that very often. Marshall beat Notre Dame last year. They're well coached with Charles Huff up there. That's going to be a tough game. Marshall is going to play you tough. So you don't get that one off. You still don't really get a break. At Duke, very losable. That's going to be a tough one. Clemson, Miami, at Wake, at Virginia Tech, North Carolina. I just look at the schedule and I'm like, they're going to be, the spreads are all going to be very, very close. And they're just not going to really have a stretch where they're going to be able to really find a rhythm, get cooking a little bit. I just think this is a brutal, brutal schedule that you're just trying to get to 6-6. Like they're going to win one game one week, lose the game the next week, and then just kind of go back and forth in this kind of transition year. I think I think they're going to hit the under. I'm going to go under on NC State this year.
Yeah, I'm with you. With the number of overs I'm picking, I think NC State has to be one of those teams that kind of that falls with others rising.
Yeah. Pitt. We might disagree here, Matt Green. Pitt, the team that loves to win the ACC when no one wants them to whatsoever. People forget they won this conference 2 years ago, sir. That was not that long ago that Kenny Pickett was out here fake sliding in the ACC title game to beat Wake Forest. Where do you have Pitt at 7.5, Matt Green?
They passed that rule immediately, like within the week. Like no one can ever do this ever again. So Pitt at 7.5. Pitt feels sneaky to me. I feel like Cincinnati is going to be worse. I think they should start 2-0 at West Virginia. Is always tricky, but West Virginia could also be the worst team in the Big 12. I feel like this schedule they do avoid Clemson. And I feel like people just sleep on Pitt. Like Phil Jurkovich is there now, and I feel like we saw what Kenny Pickett did, like you just said. Like there's this idea of who Pat Narduzzi was, that he was going to be this ground and pound, just defensive guy, but you've seen him opening up the offense. So I feel like Phil Jurkovich he's really the key to I feel like Pitt being improved, but I think Pitt is a sneaky team this year in the ACC. So give me the over on Pitt at the 7.5. I think this team's got 8-4, maybe even 9-3 potential.
I think they've got ACC title game potential. This schedule's great for Pitt. This is all making up because what does Pitt love to do? Like Florida State, everyone's just writing in Florida State Clemson in the ACC title game. Pitt's over here like, not so fast, my friend. Have you seen the start of our schedule? We might be undefeated come November against Florida State. The Florida State game at home might decide whether or not Pitt is playing Clemson in the ACC title game. Wofford, Cincy, West Virginia, North Carolina at Va Tech, Louisville at home, at Wake, at Notre Dame. That's the big one. At Notre Dame, that's it. Like that's the first big serious test. I mean, they might be favored.
Hey, don't go disrespecting those Tar Heels now.
I think they'll be favored in that game at home. Like Pitt's gonna be Pat Narduzzi, death, taxes, and Pat Narduzzi getting the most out of these guys. Phil Jurkovich is still a good quarterback. I think he's an upgrade over what we saw from Keaton Slovis, who's banged up last year. They're running that pro style scheme now. They're not doing the Whipple stuff that excelled with Kenny Pickett 2 years ago, but their defense is going to be solid. He's just going to get the most out of this group. Like I would bet this just has all the makings of a 10-2 Pitt team that were like, how did they get to 10-2 and why are they in the ACC title game against Clemson? How are they here? How did Pitt do this once again? I'm hitting the over.
I'm not that bullish, but I do feel like you said Florida State. Like I feel like that feels like a game that they upset Florida State, and maybe not put them in the ACC championship, but maybe spoils Florida State's ACC championship run, or maybe even college football playoff hopes type of game.
Okay. I like it, Matt Green. Syracuse 6.5. This is mean because it's right there on the dot. This is a good line for Q's. Where are you at?
Yeah, it definitely is. They got at Purdue early on in conference, and that was a great game a year ago. Who won that game? Do you know off the top of your head? Did Syracuse pull that out at the end? I want to say
Against who?
Against Purdue. That was your wedding weekend. because I remember watching that in the hotel. So you might not have seen that one. But
Honey,
yeah, Syracuse
32-29.
32-29.
Syracuse, Pittsburgh, or Syracuse, Purdue is on. I'll be with you in a minute. Yeah, I don't think that would have played.
Syracuse pulled it out 32-29. That was a good one last year. So we'll see if we're in for round 2. This one in West Lafayette. So that's the toughest game they have out of conference. They got Army out of conference, but they get Clemson, North Carolina, Florida State back to back to back, and at the end of September and going into October. I think that's going to be a tough stretch. I feel like bowling feels like the ceiling on this Syracuse team. Like this, they haven't been bad under Dino Babers, but they just haven't been very inspiring either. Like this team, 70th in the country in points per game last year, just not much offensively. So I don't know. I feel like I'm going to go under on Syracuse.
Ooh, that's interesting. I think I'm going to go under 2. This looks like a 5-7 schedule to me. It's like it's just not even, and I don't like having to beat Pitt late or having to win on the road at Tech, which I think will be tough in late November, depending on how Georgia Tech seasons goes. But that stretch you talked about at Purdue, Army at home, by the way. Do you know what those two? Okay, so for the non-football sickos, do you know what you're going to have to do as a defense? What Rocky Long, who is the new defensive coordinator at Syracuse, replacing I think Tony White there. Do you know what he's going to have to prepare his defense for in back-to-back weeks, Matt Green?
What's that?
He's going to have to do the air raid with Graham Harrell, who is calling the air raid at Purdue right now. Then to the triple with Army the following week. That is brutal. That is just completely throw everything you learned, practice the week prior. None of that's happening in this particular game. So I think that's an underrated part of that stretch. This has all the makings of a disaster start of the year. Then you get Clemson with the air raid so then you get Garrett Riley. You get the option, Garrett Riley, and then you're back to Chip Lindsey. Like, it's just, that's brutal. Like, I don't care how good Rocky Long is as a defensive coordinator. I think that's going to be a really, really tough go. I like Garrett Schrader if he's healthy. They had a great year last year. I felt like that was their moment, and I'm not a believer in Syracuse this year. I think 4-8, 5-7 feels right, and I wouldn't be surprised if Dino Babers doesn't make it through.
Yeah, that is a good call because I mean, you're bound to get some defensive linemen rolled up on playing that triple option right going into the gauntlet of your schedule. It's not great timing.
Yeah, not at all. UVA 3.5, Matt Green. This one's just like everyone, and rightfully so, is going to be rooting for UVA to hit that over and to be a really good team next year. I think Tennessee wins 52-7, something like that to open the year. I think Tennessee absolutely blows them out right out of the gate. There's not a lot of talent right now on both sides of the ball for UVA. I don't know where I was trying to think of something that I could say that I think they might lose to James Madison at home. James Madison's a good team and a good group of 5 school now. I think they probably lose that one. At Maryland, NC State, like that's a big one. The Friday night spooky stuff. William and Mary later on. At BC, even the bad teams in the ACC, you have to go to the road. This looks like a 2-10. Like, I mean, worst case scenario is 1-11, but I think they're going to be truly terrible. Like on both sides of the ball, I think this is going to be an abject disaster for Virginia this year. I think they're going to be. I think I'm just going to go ahead and say I think they're the worst team in the ACC this year.
Yeah, this team was 126th in the country in points per game last year. 17 points per game. Like, I'm not sure I knew you could score that few points per game in college football. Yeah, they're going to be really bad. 3.5 is just so low. Mm-hmm. But like you said, going through their schedule, like I'd love to see Maryland and Virginia. Let's keep that going more often. But I guess I'd love to see Maryland playing most of the teams in the ACC because that's what I grew up with. But yeah, seeing this schedule, I just, like you said, Tennessee out of conference, Maryland out of conference, and It's just, it doesn't get much easier for them. So yeah, I don't know what they're gonna really be good at in 2023. I guess I gotta go under as well, because I don't see it from Virginia. I think you're right. I think this is the worst team in the ACC.
It's yeah, it's just there's nothing else to say. Virginia Tech though, on the flip side, 5.5. They had a rough year one for Brent Pry. I still think they're probably moving in the right direction between the two. I'm kind of optimistic about where Virginia Tech might be headed. What about you, Matt Green?
The 5.5. I don't know. I look at it like Old Dominion, like that's not a guaranteed win.
No.
Week 1 for Virginia Tech.
Purdue.
They play Purdue as well at a conference, at Rutgers. Like,
what is the schedule? Why are you doing at Rutgers and at Marshall when you're a bad team? Like, you need gimmies at the early part of the schedule. What are you doing?
I don't know. I don't know who designed this schedule to get 2 road games like that. And like those, like Virginia Tech coming to coming to Marshall, like that's going to be their Super Bowl basically. Like that place is going to go wild for that game. Then obviously you get at Florida State. So I don't know. I'm not that sold on Virginia Tech here. I'm going to go under on Virginia Tech. I think 5 and 7 feels right for Brent Pry.
I think that's probably right too. They're 118th. We talk about Virginia's offense. They were 126. Virginia Tech was 118. They were averaging 16 points a game in their 8 losses last year. I mean, they only played 12 games, but like, the offense actually got worse as the season went along. I think they're going to eventually get there. I don't think they'll get back to the Michael Vick years and just what we saw with the peak of Beamer ball in Virginia Tech country, but I think they're still moving in the general right direction. The recruiting a little bit better. It's a long-term process. Brent Pry hasn't shied away from that, but the schedule is brutal. Like, this is a brutal year 2 schedule for Brent Pry. So I think they hit the under 2. This feels like 4 and 8 to me. Final team here. This is going to be weird. Wake Forest, 6.5. Matt Green. I think they might be sneaky awful this year. What do you think?
Oh man, I was surprised to hear you say that. I guess with Sam Hartman leaving the Demon Deacons, you're no longer on the bandwagon.
It's not me. It's the family. It's the wife. You know, like Tori. Do you remember what Tori said when you told her when you broke the news that Sam Hartman had transferred to Notre Dame?
She said, "Who?" She said that guy is not as good looking as Stetson Bennett. That's what she said.
16th offense in the country. Like Dave Clawson, you can make the case best coach in the ACC with what the resources he has at his disposal. Like, great coach. Wake Forest they lost a lot of talent, a lot of dudes to the NFL, a lot of dudes to the portal. I don't like this schedule at all for Wake Forest, especially the back half. They have to load up. They cannot drop that. I mean, Vanderbilt at home. Matt, Vanderbilt 5 and 7. Like, I think Vanderbilt probably beats Wake this year. Like, I think that's a possibility. And if you lose to Vandy at home, things get very ugly for Wake in a hurry, because at Old Dominion will be tough. They'll beat them. Georgia Tech at home, you should beat them. And you get the bye. Clemson on the road, loss. At Va Tech, like, coin flip. Pitt at home, probably a loss. Florida State at home, probably a loss. Thursday night at Duke, probably a loss. NC State, coin flip. At Notre Dame, at State. Like, this is not a bowl team. This might be one of the all-time great. Can Dave Clawson work his magic to get this team to a bowl game and get them to 6 wins? Because I think it will be a huge, huge win if he's able to do that. I don't know if I see it. I'm hitting the under. What about you?
Yeah, like you said, the way this schedule stacks up, like this 8 straight games after the bye week in late September, like of those final 8 games, like they could legitimately lose. I mean, they could lose all of them. Like I could see them losing 7 of 8 or so to end the season. Yeah, so I'm with you. I could see them beating Vanderbilt. Look, I could see them losing to Vanderbilt as well. Like this Georgia Tech, like if they want to have a decent season, they better beat Wake Forest. So they could start 2-2 and then, maybe lose 6 of 8, 7 of 8 or so. So yeah, I'm gonna go under on Wake Forest as well.
All right, as we finish up here, so your ACC championship and winner is who, Matt Green?
I'm going to have to go North Carolina Tar Heels making another appearance against the Clemson Tigers. And I'm going to go Clemson to win the ACC in 2023. Going out on a limb here.
Okay. I'm going Clemson to win as well, but I have Clemson playing Miami in the ACC.
Ooh. Wow, that's bold right there.
But I would not be surprised if it's Pitt. I would not be surprised if it's Pitt.
All right.
There you go. Matt Green, always a pleasure, my friend. Next week, we got the Pac-12 and then the Big Ten, the SEC, and then the regular season. We'll be here.
Right around the corner, man.
There you go. For that
Not
guy
for
down
Jim
there,
Harbaugh, though. He's still got a few more weeks after that.
That's true. He does. Yes, he does. He's going to treat those first 4 weeks.
How is Michigan going to get past that gauntlet 4 games without him?
I don't think they'll be able to do that quarterback on, quarterback off first 4 weeks with Harbaugh not and Gary. You got to play JJ the 4 full weeks. Can't mess around now without Harbaugh on the sideline. So there you go. Matt Green, always a pleasure. I'll talk to you next week.
Yes.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.